Hello folks, welcome to my desktop. And today we're going to be checking out my latest Reverb G2 VR settings guide. It's been a while since I've done one of these and a few things have changed, and I'm no expert guys, I've never professed to be. Having said that, I think you can see that I do get really good performance. I'm going to be talking about both my 3090 machine, but also 1080 Ti users out there as well, and what I use for my system, because I have both, you see, so I think that might be quite useful for you. Okay, let's get straight into it. First of all, I'm going to go to the Microsoft Flight Simulator settings. This is what I use for my 10900K 3090. Now, this doesn't apply to you, just wind it on a bit, and I'm going to show you what I use for my 1080 Ti machine as well, which I think is quite useful for some of you guys. Right, start with the render scale. 100%, of course, the 3090, one of the best things about that card is that it can really handle high resolution VR, so I keep that 100%. TAA, I think that's a given these days really, it's the only one that really works and looks sharp. And terrain level detail, now, even though we can now go up to the dizzying heights of 400, I would not recommend it. There is a penalty. I know the Sobo team said there's very minimal impact, but I think for VR users there's still a substantial amount, up to about 5 frames per second that I've noticed. So I keep that at 200. That's fine for me. Off-screen terrain pre-caching, that's really important actually. I leave that on ultra, but again, that is a bit of a hefty one. But for this system, it doesn't seem to have too much of a problem. Terrain vector data high, buildings medium. Now, guys, seriously, buildings is a big one for frame rate. Even on my system, if I move that up one notch, there is a significant impact on frame rate. So I keep all of these on medium. In fact, you know, one thing about this sim is that graphics from sort of medium to high to ultra, there's not a massive difference in visual fidelity, so you're not really missing out on too much. Keep going down here, volumetric clouds. You know, the thing is, guys, I can run all these settings on ultra now, but I choose not to because I want headroom. This is the important thing, and this is the same thing here with volumetric clouds. Yes, I can run them on ultra. I prefer them on high because the difference between high and ultra is not a massive, there's not a huge amount of difference there. But in terms of frame rate, there's a huge difference, up to about 10 frames per second on certain systems. With mine, there's about 5 frames per second deficit there. That's a big deal in VR, guys. It is. And if you can hear some strange noises downstairs, by the way, guys, Melissa is currently rocking out to some Slipknot, so apologies for that. But it's quite funny to listen to if you can't hear it on the microphone. Right, so what else we got here? Yeah, obviously, filtering is really good with the 3090, so I'd recommend keeping that at 16 times. And I'd recommend this for people with particularly 3070s, 3080s, 3080 Ti's, and of course the 3090, and that includes the 3070 Ti as well. So 30 series owners, this is useful settings for you guys. Water waves, yeah, high. Shadows, I've bumped up a little bit, but to be honest, shadows are still an area of the sim that is not optimized very well, so I keep them quite low, to be honest. Contact shadows, see, a lot of this stuff, if you compare this to my pre-sort of sim update 5, my settings are a lot higher now. They really are, and I don't know why windshield effect is on low. That should be on ultra. Doesn't have much of an impact on frame rate for me, and I really love those rain effects. Ambient occlusion, I used to have that off because it was just too much of a frame rate killer. Now I can use it. All good stuff there. Same with reflections, I've got them on medium. And light shafts, that is a personal preference, guys. Light shafts is a beautiful feature when you're flying in very, variable weather conditions, stormy conditions. You can see the light bouncing off nearby clouds. It's a beautiful thing, but it does hurt frame rate. But I do like that. I've settled on medium. And cockpit refresh rate, that isn't so much of a killer as it used to be because it's got its own core these days. Right, now for the traffic tab. This may surprise you because I really, generally speaking, have this fairly low. I know a lot of people out there and some setup videos have this on maximum or really high. I would not recommend that. This is a silent killer for frame rate, okay? It really is. And I'd recommend, even if you have this down, say about 10% or 15%, you're going to get the odd vehicle buzzing around, and that's enough for me personally to feel realistic. If you have this really high up, there's just far too many, it's overdone, and it's not optimized very well. In terms of ships and ferries, that doesn't have much impact at all, to be honest, and it's very nice to see the odd ship or ferry in the seas. And road vehicles, that does hurt performance, guys, surprisingly it does. So, but I do love to see road traffic, so these are my options here. There we go, guys. I hope that's of use. We're now going to head over to the next part of the settings. Now, I've left this like this on purpose. This is the Windows Mixed Reality portal for the Reverb GT. I've got it connected at the moment. These are some very important things. First of all, if you do not have it set as your runtime, these days you'll get this option here to fix it. Okay, so if I press fix, now if you go into your registration, which I will link all this, by the way, in the description below where you can find this. This is where your active runtime sits for your headset. Now, I use 4 different headsets these days, okay? So I'm having to change this a lot of the time. But thankfully, in the software, you can do that now with the Aero, let's say, and Oculus and Steam VR. But you can't with the Windows Mixed Reality, apart from the fact it does give you that fix button. So if you are wondering why your Reverb is not connecting to the sim, make sure your active runtime is set to this, okay? And I'll have this link here in the description below so you can easily access it. Right, what else we got then? Right, yeah, Windows Mixed Reality. This is really important, guys. This saves you a ton of frames. As you can see here, with the latest Windows Mixed Reality portal software, you can actually switch the mirror off completely. So at the moment, you'll see the mirror. It wants me to put the headset on, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, if I'm using the mirror for YouTubey things, then I'd want that on. And pretty much for most people who are not YouTubers, you don't need to see the mirror. So this little button here, stop preview, just keep it like that all the time. That will save you up to 10 frames per second, honestly. Settings here, we go to the headset display, and again, set this to let Windows decide. 720p, unless you're, capturing the mirror, keep things very, very low, okay? And this is what I've got here. Best visual quality, that is, I'd recommend actually that let Windows decide. The reason why I've got that set to that is because obviously I use a mirror. But for you guys that aren't YouTubers, as I've said, keep this to these settings. Right, what we got next? Nvidia. I'm using the latest Nvidia driver. I'll put on the screen now what it is. Now I actually think, and this is going to really surprise you guys, that the 457-30 driver is still the best for frame rate and frame time. I used it the other day and I was quite surprised. However, I've got to the point now where I've got to say goodbye to that driver because I need the more up-to-date features to use Nvidia Broadcast, and the Aero software as well, the Vario base. But to be honest, if you're not bothered about any of that stuff, the 457-30 driver I think is still the best. And it hurts big time, but it definitely is very good. But anyway, this is the latest driver, and these are all the settings I use. Okay, this is going to be really easy to show because basically all I change is this here, the texture filtering quality to performance and virtual reality pre-rendered frames to 2. That is it. I know some of you guys out there are using basically a capped frame rate of 32 frames per second. I do not recommend that, guys, particularly if you're using motion reprojection. It will cause horrendous periodic stutters. But give it a go if you want, but I do not recommend it on this channel, personally. Trying to be as quick as possible, guys, because I know your time is precious. Let's have a look here, GPU. Right, if you put GPU in here, I've got this set to off, right? This is HAGS. This is quite a contentious one, a bit controversial. This is hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. Now, if you've got a 30 series graphics card and you're running the Reverb G2, I would absolutely recommend switching this on. It definitely helps with performance, okay? Having said that, if you have a 20 series card or a 10 series card, switch this off because it won't make any difference at all, okay? Also, I'd recommend that you have game mode off as well. One thing I forgot to do, and that's show you the setting for the 1080 Ti machine for this sort of in the sim settings. So I'm now going to cut the video and I'm going to show you my settings for the graphics for the 1080 Ti now. Right, so we're back again. These are my settings that I use for my 600K 1080 Ti machine. And Melissa is now rocking out to some Nirvana. So I don't know if you can hear that. Anyway, so render scale, 70%, okay? That's with OpenXR at 70% as well. I use that for my 1080 Ti machine. This is also what I use for my LOD and all the other stuff. I'm not going to go through each option, but that is exactly what I use. Actually, there's a couple of things I need to change here that I forgot. I actually have buildings on low and grass and bushes off, because that is a big one actually as well. I know it might hurt to have such low graphic settings, but guys, this is important. A lot of the people that are complaining about frame rate and issues with motion reprojection is just because you're setting everything far too high. If you just set and forget, and this is what my settings are about. I don't do setup videos every single week. I think it's ridiculous. We want to have a settings for perhaps each update would make sense. If there's any hardware or performance improvements, then we can go into this again and look at what's changed. This is a set and forget scenario. With these settings, I can run 30 frames per second with my 8600K 1080 Ti machine everywhere, and I don't have to think about it. And honestly, it's brilliant. It works really well. So I'd recommend, guys, just be a little bit more aggressive with changing those settings, okay? So this is the OpenXR Runtime platform. I'd recommend downloading this if you haven't already. I'll have a link in the description below. But actually, if you go to your Windows Store, you'll find it in here if you just search for it. Look, and sometimes you'll see updates here as well. Now, something I just want to mention. During the VR beta, which I was a part of, I'm pleased to say that me and many others were the reason why this changed. Previously, you wouldn't have any of these options at all. So I'm very, very thankful to the Windows Mixed Reality team that they've able to give you this sort of customize settings here, because they're so important. And I always use 70% in OpenXR and 100% in render scale. Okay, that's something I've used since VR was a thing in this sim, and it works really well. I know that some of you, including in my Discord, but I'll link in the description below, because my Discord group has some amazing, knowledgeable people in there that are very, very keen to help all of you. And it's getting quite big, that Discord group now, so feel free to join. But some of them suggest 200% in OpenXR and 50% in the render scale in the sim. That it works okay, but the trouble is the cockpit detail, the G1000s are going to suffer. They're not going to be as sharp, okay? But feel free to try that, because I know some of you are very happy with that setting. So who am I to judge? But for me, it's always going to be 100% render scale, because the render scale here, right guys, it's a custom resolution for the sim itself. So it's going to hurt more turning this down than any other setting. Render scale 100% looks absolutely beautiful in the Reverb G2. Also, I'd recommend at the time of recording, this changes a lot, that preview mode, keep that off. Because now you can have 22.5 frames per second even without preview mode if you use motion reprojection. At the moment, if you have preview mode on, if you go in and out of VR, it will crash the sim. That's something that will be fixed soon. As well as a new OpenXR update, which I'm going to announce very soon, which I'm very excited about, that I've had a bit of a tip off, but I won't go into that just yet. That'll be another video. Now, here's a contentious one for you. Motion reprojection. It splits opinions all the time. But at the end of the day, right, the only way you're going to get a perceived 90 frames per second and a smooth motion across the ground is to have this on. Now, for me personally, if I'm flying low to the ground and I'm flying VFR, I will always have motion reprojection on. It's one of the killer features of the Reverb G2 that I love, okay? But in order to enjoy motion reprojection, your system has to at least get to the target frame rate. That's why you sometimes get wavering and issues, because it's still reprojecting, but it's doing it really low down. Motion reprojection at 30 frames per second is what you want. 22.5 is a worst case scenario, but when it gets down that low, you're going to get wavering, you're going to get artifacts. So keep it at 30 frames per second, and that's the idea of why all my settings are the way they are here and everywhere else, okay? So, but if you're not a motion reprojection fan, that's fine, disable it as well. One good thing about having motion reprojection off, you get a clearer image with the Reverb G2. So if I'm doing a flight in, say, the CRJ, you know, for instance, I will have it off, because if you're really quite high, you're not going to notice those the terrain juddering. But you will absolutely, I don't care what anybody says, any YouTuber saying it's smooth, if you have motion reprojection off and you're close to the ground in, say, the Hawk, and you bank and you look left as you're banking, you will see ghosting and stuttering, and it will hurt your eyes. It's just one of those things. It's a trade-off, okay? But that's something, as I say, is, I guess it's up to you guys. Please just feel free to mess around with this as much as you want. But for me personally, I use motion reprojection on when I'm low to the ground in a fast jet or just VFR flying in general. I have it switched off if I want to do a long haul flight or I'm a lot higher up or I need that clarity. I hope that makes sense, guys, because I've harped on about this so many times in my videos. So I hope that's been of some help, folks, and as I say, if I've missed something, please do let me know in the comments, because I probably have. I'm also going to link Mark from the SimHanger's Reverb G2 setup guide in the link below, because his video is very polished and much better than mine. But it basically says the same things pretty much, and I do think that his channel is fantastic. Please subscribe to him and to me as well. 80% of you are not subscribed to this channel. I'm not asking for donations or a Patreon page or membership and any of that crap. I just want you to like and subscribe, you know, the whole thing we say as YouTubers, because that does help me sort of produce content in the future. Take care, folks, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye for now.